A mysterious note from the doctor. Don't go home, run. That chilling warning unveiled a horrifying truth. Betrayal. From her own son and daughter-in-law, the ones who had stabbed a fatal blow to the heart of a mother who had sacrificed her entire life. The family shattered, the mother trembling at the edge of a precipice. Will she confront the painful truth or choose forgiveness to bury the tragedy? Stay tuned to see what her final decision will be. Before we begin this story, let me know where you are listening from in the comments below. My name is Emma James. I'm 68 years old, and what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you see your own family. That day, I will never forget the feeling when I walked into Dr. Reed's clinic. The chill of the examination room, the eerie silence, and the blinding white light reflecting off every surface made me feel as if I were stepping into another world. A world where everything could be judged coldly, without mercy. Dr. Reed was the only person I could trust at this moment, but now I didn't know what to do with the information he was about to give me. I sat down on the hard leather chair, my fingers interlaced, feeling as if I couldn't breathe. Dr. Reed wasn't like in our previous meetings. Today he looked at me with a stern gaze, completely different from every other time. Though we had met many times, this time his eyes made me feel that something was wrong. He slowly placed a sheet of paper in my hand, but I didn't dare look at it. I could feel it in the air. Something was waiting for me, something I didn't want to know. Don't go home, Emma. Run. His voice sounded, not loud but full of urgency. I looked up and met his eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt as if I had been woken from a dream, or rather, from a nightmare. I couldn't make sense of those words. Dr. Reed wasn't someone who joked, and clearly he wasn't easily frightened. But why was he telling me to do this? Ben and Sarah are planning to put you in a nursing home and seize your assets, he continued, his tone anything but gentle. Each word he spoke felt like a knife stabbing into my heart. I looked down at the paper, feeling as if I had just taken a direct blow to the head. They are manipulating you. You must leave right now, or it will be too late. I couldn't breathe. My son, Ben, the one I had raised, had loved for so many years, could do this? And Sarah, the daughter-in-law I had treated like my own child, was the one behind this plan? How could that be? It felt as if the ground had collapsed beneath my feet, and everything around me suddenly became blurry, no longer clear. My son, Ben. He was my pride. After my husband died, I raised him alone. I poured all my love and sacrifice into Ben. He was everything to me. I endured so many hardships, so many years of struggle to ensure he could have a bright future. I trusted him. I believed Ben would never betray me. I felt a cold current run down my spine. It was as if someone had thrust a knife into my heart and twisted it. Everything I had built throughout my life suddenly dissolved in an instant. All my faith in my son, in family, in love was torn apart. Why would Ben do this? Why would Sarah take part in it? I had given them everything, and now what were they doing? Plotting to put me in a nursing home to seize my assets? I simply couldn't believe it. Dr. Reed went on to explain what I had to do immediately. He told me not to go home, not to let Ben and Sarah know that I knew about their plan. He said I needed to find a place to hide, to protect myself. He promised he would help me, but I needed to act right now. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I had no other choice. I felt as if I were in a movie I couldn't walk out of. Every step of my life, I had always believed that family was the most important thing. But now, my family was what I had to protect myself from. I couldn't believe what was happening. My own son, to whom I had given all my love and sacrifice, was now my enemy. Sarah, the wife I had welcomed like a daughter, was joining Ben in this scheme. Everything was spinning around me. I felt as if I were losing everything. Not just my assets, not just the house I had lived in all my life, but my faith in my son, in my family, and in myself. I knew I had to go somewhere, had to find a safe place where they couldn't find me. I couldn't go home. I couldn't let them see that I knew the truth. I had to do something immediately. I was no longer myself. I was no longer the woman who had once believed in everything. Now I was just a woman, running from her own family. I left the clinic and stepped outside. Everything around me seemed to cease to exist. I didn't know where to go or what to do, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let them win. I had to protect myself. I had to fight. I sat in a small cafe nearby, trying to calm down, but inside I was only filled with confusion and despair. I couldn't believe what had happened. How could my life, the years I had lived for my family, shatter in a single moment? Then I decided to call my lawyer. I knew only he could help me in this situation. He was the only person I could trust right now. The call connected, and his voice came through the phone. "Emma, don't worry. We will protect you. But you must act immediately. Don't go home. Don't let them find out you know." And at that moment, I realized this wasn't just a battle to reclaim my assets. This was a fight to protect myself, to protect my very self, the honor I had spent my whole life building. I would not let my son, the people I loved most, destroy everything I had. I stood up, decided. No matter how bad things got, I would not let myself lose. I would fight, and I would not give up. Since I received the paper from Dr. Reed, I have not been myself. That feeling, that of someone deceived, betrayed, stripped of everything she had built, left me reeling. I cannot believe that my life, the years I devoted to my family, to Ben, could end in betrayal like this. All of Ben's promises, all the moments when I thought our family would always be together, have now become a joke. The dream of a peaceful life beside my son shattered in an instant. The memories of Ben remain vivid in me, like a slow-motion film. I clearly remember him as a child, the afternoons we spent walking together, the times Ben hugged me after a long day of studying. Happiness flooded my heart every time I watched my son grow up. Ben was my pride. He was everything to me. And I never thought there would come a day when Ben himself would become the one who hurt me most. Everything changed gradually. At first, I only noticed Ben asking odd questions about my assets. "Mom, if you're gone, what will happen to your assets?" That question hovered in my mind for a long time. I didn't pay much attention, thinking my son was simply concerned about what might happen in the future. But now I realize those were probing questions, meant to gauge his place in the plan that Ben and Sarah were quietly mapping out. Sarah, the daughter-in-law I always regarded as a daughter, is now someone I cannot trust. At first, I thought she was merely worried about my health, but now I understand she has been calculating every step, from fussing over my diet to asking after my health excessively. She wasn't just a good daughter-in-law. She was someone with a scheme, someone standing behind those plans. All of this hurt me beyond words. I felt as if a knife had been driven straight through my heart, and there was nothing I could do to avoid it. Thinking back to Ben's early years, I once believed I had done everything to build him a good life. I sacrificed everything for Ben. From the hours spent tending to each meal to helping him with his studies, I never gave up on my son. He was everything to me. On late nights, I sat at the table in the living room watching Ben study, and I felt proud as I saw my child grow step by step. But now, what I see is a completely different Ben, someone who no longer values what I did for him. He has been driven by greed. Looking back, I realize I too readily overlooked the suspicious signs. The repeated questions about my assets, about my will, about bank accounts, all of it meant something. But I failed to recognize the danger lurking in them. Because I trusted my family too much, I didn't see that my own son and daughter-in-law were plotting to seize everything I had worked so hard to build. The feeling of betrayal isn't merely a loss of money. It is the shattering of trust, the disappointment in the very person I love most in this life. What pains me most is realizing that Ben has changed. He is no longer the child I taught and cared for. He is no longer the person I once hoped would protect me in old age. More painfully, I must face the truth that I myself created a traitor, that I taught him the very values he now exploits to harm me. This feeling is terrible. I can't accept it. At that point, I asked myself, was I wrong to trust Ben? Was I wrong to love him too much, to sacrifice too much? If I hadn't loved Ben the way I did, would he have become the person he is now? Those questions kept drilling through my mind, keeping me from sleep. Every night, I woke in the middle of the night, thinking about the years gone by, the moments I had lived, and I couldn't understand why Ben had become this way. Part of me wanted to find a way to forgive, to think this was only a mistake. But another part felt this was a truth I couldn't deny. How could I continue to love someone who had hurt me this much? How could I keep looking at Ben without feeling deceived and betrayed? I could not accept this situation, and I knew I had to act. I couldn't just sit there and wait for everything to collapse. I had to do something to protect myself, to protect what I had spent my whole life building. I could not let Ben and Sarah strip away everything I had created. If I didn't act, I would lose it all, and that was something I could not allow. At this point, I decided to contact my lawyer. He was the only person I trusted now, the only one who could help me out of this predicament. The call was very brief, but I could sense the seriousness in his voice. Emma, we can't delay any longer. You have to protect your assets. We will not let them carry out this plan. His words were like a jolt that snapped me out of my stupor, making me realize there was no time left to think. I had to act immediately. We began to plan our course of action. I could not let Ben and Sarah achieve their aim. I could not allow them to keep taking everything. But throughout this process, what hurt me most was knowing I would never again be able to see my son the way I once did. I would have to face the truth that my son was no longer the person I loved, and perhaps would never be again. But no matter what, I could not let myself fall. I would fight to protect what I had, even if it meant losing the people dearest to me. I would not let this betrayal take away everything I had built. I would stand up, and I would never give up. I couldn't stop thinking about my meeting with lawyer John Carter in the days that followed. Although I knew I had done the right thing, I couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety that overwhelmed me. Having to stand up to my son, someone I had devoted my life to raising and teaching, made me constantly question, am I doing the right thing? Am I going too far? But then I reminded myself I couldn't continue living in the shadows of blind trust and a shattered belief. Every moment of hesitation, every time I doubted, was an opportunity for Ben and Sarah to take control of my life. I couldn't accept that. The next day, I began to take the first steps in the legal battle I never thought I would have to face. I couldn't just sit back and let the betrayers manipulate me. I began to think about everything I had built throughout my life. Every drop of sweat, every effort, every sacrifice. Every piece of land I had worked so hard to cultivate was now the target of Ben and Sarah's greed. Everything became painfully clear. I had to protect my assets, protect my dignity, and the values I had spent my entire life building. I couldn't stop thinking about Ben. The feeling lingered in my mind like a ghost I couldn't shake. How could I face him? How could I ask him to give up control of my assets? How could my own son treat me like this? Still, those thoughts couldn't stop me from acting. If I kept hesitating, I would only fall deeper into despair. I decided that the first thing I had to do was protect my assets from Ben and Sarah. I started contacting banks to change the access to all my accounts. I couldn't let them take any of the money I had worked my entire life to earn. They had deceived me for so long, and I couldn't let them continue. Every time I made a call, I could feel the tension within me. They asked me many questions, and I had to stand firm in my position. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The thoughts in my mind kept spinning, the feeling of loss and betrayal still fresh in my heart. I looked out the window, where the sky remained gloomy, almost reflecting my mood. But then I remembered John's words. Emma, you need to act right now. And I knew I couldn't back down. I had to keep moving forward, even if the path ahead was full of challenges. I called the lawyer, and we continued planning to protect my interests. John and I discussed how to revoke Ben's power of attorney. This power of attorney had been granted to him long ago, because I believed he would be the one to help manage my assets when I no longer had the ability to. But now, that very power of attorney had become a tool for Ben to manipulate and seize my assets. We immediately began the legal process to revoke the power of attorney. Every word in the document John drafted made me feel like I was stepping into a ruthless battle with no room for weakness. Once the necessary procedures were complete, I began preparing for the next steps. I asked my lawyer to draft a request to revoke Ben's power of attorney and transfer authority to someone I trusted. I also started gathering the necessary documents to strengthen my position in this legal battle. Every step felt like a challenge, each step heavy and painful. But I knew I couldn't hesitate. That evening, I sat alone in the living room, looking out the window. The dim lights reflected on the wet ground, and I couldn't stop thinking about everything. I had lived a life full of love and sacrifice, given my youth to raise my son. But now, all I received in return was betrayal. Ben, my son, the one I trusted more than anyone, was the one behind the plan to destroy my life. I remembered the days when Ben was still a child, when I could trust him unconditionally, when I was the only one in his life, and I gave everything to raise him into the person he is today. But now, all of that was just the past. I no longer saw my son. I only saw a stranger, someone I couldn't understand anymore. I couldn't imagine that he could be so greedy, that he could deceive his own mother to take everything I had spent my life working for. At that moment, I remembered the days when I still trusted Ben, the times we sat together at dinner, talking about life. I had thought that, no matter what happened, family would always be my solid support. But now, family had become the place where I had to fight. My son, the one I had hoped would protect me in my old age, was the one pushing me into this situation. I couldn't let this pain stop. I couldn't let Ben and Sarah win. I had to do what was necessary to protect my assets, and more importantly, I had to protect myself. Faced with this betrayal, I couldn't just stay silent. I couldn't let everything pass by. I had to be strong. I had to stand up and fight. The next day, I continued to take the necessary steps. Every phone call with the bank, every document I signed, made me feel like I was fighting in a battle I didn't want to be part of, but couldn't back out of. I began to feel a change in myself. Each time I took an action, I felt stronger. I couldn't let everything fall apart without doing something. I had to act, and I wouldn't back down. Though every step was difficult, I wasn't afraid anymore. I understood that life wasn't always fair, and sometimes, to protect ourselves, we have to do things we don't want to. But I would never give up. No matter that Ben is my son, no matter that Sarah is my daughter-in-law, I would fight until the end. And I knew, no matter how long and painful this road would be, I wouldn't be alone. I would fight until I could protect everything I had built. I wouldn't let anyone, even my own family, destroy my life. I had come too far in this journey to turn back now. The feeling of betrayal is like a knife deeply embedded in my heart, not only because of the deceit, but also due to the pain of the loss of trust. Every morning when I wake up, I can feel the coldness in the house that I once considered my safest place. These walls, the familiar objects around me, are now mere remnants of a time that has passed. A family that was once happy, now turned into a dark, ominous place. That feeling is like a ghost that will never leave me. My son, Ben, is the one I have devoted everything in my life to raising. I never imagined that one day he would cause me so much pain. Never did I think that the love and trust I placed in my son would become tools for ambition and exploitation. But now, I can do nothing but face the truth, no matter how painful it is. The tears I once shed out of happiness are now the tears of loss and disappointment. Nevertheless, I cannot sit idly in sorrow. I cannot let Ben and Sarah continue to manipulate my life. I need to understand everything, especially about Ben. How could he have changed so much? Is this change driven by greed, or are there deeper factors that I haven't recognized? These questions haunt me every day, every night. I decided I had to get to the bottom of things. I couldn't live in the dark, not knowing what I was up against. I began reaching out to some of Ben's old friends, people I knew had been very close to him, to see if they could tell me anything. One of them was Jake, a longtime friend of Ben's, someone I trusted and knew would have an objective view of the situation. This meeting was one I hadn't imagined having, but now I needed the information. I needed to understand Ben more, to find out the reason behind his actions. Was it something I had failed to do all these years? Had I raised Ben the wrong way? These questions pained me, but I knew I couldn't keep living in ambiguity. The cafe where I met Jake was quiet, and it felt like I was stepping into another space, a space where I could momentarily set aside all my worries. Jake sat there, a man changed. I could see the fatigue and sorrow in his eyes. The wrinkles on his face were more pronounced, and the weariness in his voice told me that he was no longer the cheerful, energetic friend I had once known. We sat across from each other for a long while without saying a word. The air around us was heavy, as if the thoughts in each of our minds were weighing down the space. Finally, I decided to speak. "Jake, I need to know about Ben. I know he's changed a lot, and I don't understand why. He's no longer the child I raised." Jake looked at me, his eyes hesitant, but then he sighed and began to speak. "Emma, Ben is not the person you think. He's no longer the boy you once knew. He's made some serious financial mistakes, and now everything has gone too far." Jake's words were like a slap in the face. Each word he spoke made me feel like a part of me was breaking apart. "Ben is in debt?" I asked, unable to believe what I was hearing. "He's gotten deeply into debt. And Sarah, she's not helping him. On the contrary, she's encouraging Ben to find ways to get the money back at any cost." At that moment, everything started to become clearer, but it hurt even more. Ben hadn't just lost himself in ambition. He had been drawn into a spiral of debt with no way out. But why hadn't he come to me for help? Why hadn't he shared this with his mother? Why hadn't he asked for a word of support? The feeling made my throat tighten, and I couldn't stop asking myself those questions. What did I do wrong? How could I not see that my son was facing such serious difficulties? And Sarah, the one I had always regarded as a daughter, why did she let Ben do these things? Not only enabling him, but encouraging him to make these wrong decisions. I started to feel not only pain, but also anger. This feeling truly hurt me, and I couldn't stop thinking about everything. A son I had loved and sacrificed everything for now had disappointed me like this. "Ben isn't a bad person," Jake continued, his voice somber. "But he's been under enormous pressure from the debts, and I think Sarah advised him to take this route as a way out. He's lost his way. And now, everything revolves around your assets. Ben no longer sees anything but what he thinks he needs to get out of the debt trap." I couldn't stop thinking about what Jake had just said. Ben wasn't a greedy villain, but desperation had pushed him into a corner with no escape. But I still couldn't understand why he would choose to hurt his mother, why he would deceive the person who had given her whole life for him. "So what should I do, Jake?" I asked, my voice weak. "What do I do when my son can treat me like this?" Jake was silent for a moment, then looked at me with eyes full of empathy. "Emma, I don't know the answer, but I think you need to clarify everything. If Ben can change, if he can realize his mistakes, then at least you need to give him a chance to make things right. But you also have to protect yourself. If you don't, Ben won't realize he's going down the wrong path." The feelings inside me at that moment were indescribable. I was torn between the love for my son and the betrayal I was facing. If I continued to protect Ben, I might be able to save him from the wrong path, but I also couldn't let myself be the prey of manipulation. We ended the conversation in silence. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. The tears couldn't fall, but deep inside, I felt the breaking. I couldn't go back to how things were, but I couldn't give up on Ben. I had to do something, help him if I could. But I also couldn't let myself continue to be deceived, to be manipulated. The next day, I began to take the next steps. I couldn't sit still and hope everything would resolve itself. I had to be stronger than ever, no matter how serious the mistakes my son was making. The first feeling I had when stepping into this room, which I once thought would be a sanctuary, a warm family home, was a strange sense of unfamiliarity. Everything around me seemed to have changed. It no longer felt like the familiar atmosphere I once knew. Ben and Sarah sat opposite me, their eyes avoiding mine, filled with worry and, to some extent, anger. My heart felt torn, unable to find any peace. I didn't know what to say, didn't know where to start. But one thing I was sure of: this confrontation was not going to be easy. The feelings surged back as I looked into Ben's eyes, the son I had raised from a young age. For so many years, I had only one belief: faith in my son, in this family. I had devoted my youth, all my hard days, to raising him, to ensure he could have a better life than mine. But now, standing before me, Ben was no longer my son. He was no longer the innocent child I once loved and protected. He was the person I had to face, the one standing on a path I couldn't walk alongside. I took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions that surged within me. Ben, I began, my voice not trembling, though my heart was chaotic. I know everything. I know about your and Sarah's plan. You can't deceive me forever. At that moment, the silence in the room felt endless. Ben looked at me for a moment, his eyes filled with surprise, tinged with confusion. He didn't say anything, just stared at me, as if searching for an explanation. But he couldn't deny the truth, couldn't deny that I knew everything he had done behind my back. He was still my son, but I no longer recognized him. Sarah sat silently beside him, but I could feel the tension in her body. She didn't dare look me in the eye, her gaze full of avoidance, as though trying to escape the truth. But I couldn't let her avoid it any longer. That was when I decided I had to speak clearly, no matter how painful the truth was. I can't live in this deceit anymore, I said, each word I spoke heavy with pain. You and Sarah plan to put me in a nursing home to seize my assets, and I know everything. I can't keep living in this lie. I saw Sarah lower her head, no longer daring to look directly at me. She could no longer deny it, couldn't justify her actions anymore. As for Ben, he remained silent. His eyes seemed to search for a reason, but there was no reason that could justify what they had done. Mom, Ben spoke, his voice choking. I just want to help you. You don't understand. You don't see that I've done everything to make sure you have a peaceful life. You're not young anymore. You can't live on your own forever. I heard him, but my heart couldn't accept that excuse. Help me? I repeated, trying to remain calm even though my heart was breaking. You're not helping me, Ben. You're exploiting me, stealing everything I've built. Are you doing this because you want me to be happy? Or is it because of greed, because of the money you think belongs to you? The silence stretched on in the room. Ben looked at me, his gaze confused, but I knew he couldn't deny what I had just said. Everything had become so clear. My son hadn't just betrayed me, but he had done so with someone I had once regarded as a daughter, Sarah. They had no excuse left. They couldn't deny the truth, no matter how much I wanted to believe in them. You don't understand me, Ben continued, his voice growing slightly agitated. I just want what's best for you. I don't understand why you think I'm trying to hurt you. Don't you see that I'm trying to help you? I looked at him, unable to say anything more. Pain and anger were rising inside me. My son, the one I had given all my love for so many years, now stood before me, unrepentant, unwilling to acknowledge what he had done. Ben, I said, my voice now firmer than ever. I don't need your help this way. I don't need to be stripped of everything. Just so you can benefit. I've lived my life for you. And now, you want to take everything I have. At this point, I could see that Ben couldn't say anything more. He just sat there, his eyes filled with torment. He didn't have the courage to look at me anymore, and I knew that he couldn't continue justifying what he had done. But at that moment, I understood that no matter how much I loved my son, I couldn't let this betrayal continue. He had gone too far, and I couldn't let myself keep being deceived. Sarah still sat there, her head lowered, saying nothing. She couldn't face me anymore. I knew everything had become crystal clear. She and Ben had conspired together to seize my assets, and now I wasn't going to let them continue doing that. "Daughter-in-law," I said, my voice cold. "And you, Sarah? Do you have anything to say to me?" Sarah didn't answer immediately, but I could see the fear starting to creep into her. "Mom, I don't want things to go too far," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want you to feel hurt. I just wanted to help you." But her words held no value anymore. I couldn't believe in her excuses. She couldn't erase the truth. She couldn't make everything lighter with her words. Betrayal couldn't be erased with just explanations. I stood up, saying nothing further. The pain and disappointment felt like a wave rising inside me, but I wouldn't allow myself to break. I had said everything I needed to say. I had stood up to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. I had given Ben and Sarah a chance to explain, but now there was nothing left to say. This confrontation wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a larger battle. A battle I had to fight to protect myself, to protect everything I had built. As I stepped out of the room, I felt like I had just escaped from a nightmare. I couldn't go back to how things were. Both Ben and Sarah were no longer the people I had once loved, and I couldn't continue living in this pain and disappointment. I would protect everything I had spent my life building, and I wouldn't let anyone, even the ones I loved most, take away what I had created. That confrontation with Ben and Sarah was not just a conversation, but an internal battle full of pain and cruelty. The feeling of having to look my son in the eye, the son for whom I had sacrificed everything, now standing as the person I had to fight to protect myself from, is beyond words. Every word I spoke felt like a knife cutting into my heart, but I understood that it was the only thing I could do to preserve my dignity and everything I had built. After that confrontation, I felt like a storm inside me that couldn't stop. Even though I had spoken the truth, even though it was something I never wanted to face, I still felt a sense of emptiness, as if a part of me had disappeared forever. Ben, my son, was no longer the person I had loved, raised and nurtured all these years. He was no longer the innocent child I once hoped would grow into a strong, independent man. Instead, I saw a stranger. Someone driven by ambition and desperation, willing to do anything to achieve his goals, even betray the one person who had given him all her love. That feeling is indescribable, but I knew I couldn't let it take over my mind. If I kept allowing emotions and pain to dominate, I would only become a victim in the game Ben and Sarah had set up. I couldn't let that happen. I had spent my whole life protecting this family, building a strong home, but now I had to stand up to protect myself. The next day, when the emotional waves started to calm down, I realized I couldn't keep sinking into the gloom of betrayal. I had to do something. take immediate action to ensure that everything I had built wouldn't be taken from me. I couldn't let Ben continue manipulating me. I had given him a chance to explain, but he couldn't do so sincerely. Both Ben and Sarah no longer had a place in my life. They were no longer people I could trust. I decided to start taking concrete steps to protect myself. The first thing I had to do was change the power of attorney I had granted to Ben. Although I knew it was not an easy step, I understood that if I didn't do it, I would have nothing left to protect. I called my lawyer, John Carter, whom I had worked with for many years. This call was different from the ones before. It carried a sense of urgency and decisiveness I had never felt before. "John, I need to revoke Ben's power of attorney immediately," I said, my voice firmer than ever. "I can't let him continue controlling my assets. He's no longer my son." John was silent for a moment, as if he understood the seriousness of the situation. "Emma, I'll help you with this. We'll start the process right away. But you need to be prepared, as this will be a long battle." I nodded, even though my heart was still filled with worry and fear. But I knew I had no other choice. I couldn't let Ben continue hurting me, and I couldn't let myself become a victim of this deceit. Everything had crossed a line I could no longer accept. I had to act to protect myself, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. I didn't just change the access to my bank accounts. I also asked my lawyer to send a letter to Ben, warning him that I had revoked his power of attorney. Every time I signed those documents, I felt a pain surge through my heart, but I also felt a new strength rising within me. I was no longer the weak woman, the betrayed mother. I was the woman standing up, deciding her own fate, no matter what the cost. Every phone call with the bank, every conversation with the lawyer, made me feel clearly that I was on the right path. It wasn't an easy path, but at least it was the only path I could take. I couldn't sit still and let everything slip away. I had lived too long in fear, in the shadow of the people I once loved. Now, I had to live for myself, protect what was mine. But deep inside, I couldn't stop thinking about Ben. The feeling of losing my son, of losing a part of my heart, was something that couldn't be filled. But I also understood that I couldn't keep living in blindness. This betrayal couldn't continue to control me. If I didn't stand up, I would lose everything. Not just my assets, but also myself. I couldn't let that happen. I began to feel like I was opening a new chapter in my life, even though it was a chapter full of sorrow. I couldn't change the past, couldn't fix Ben's mistakes, but I could decide the path I would take. I couldn't change the people around me, but I could change the way I face them. And today, I decided I wouldn't let anyone exploit me anymore. When I stood in front of the court, preparing to sign the necessary documents to officially revoke the power of attorney, I felt like I was stepping into a different world. Not the world of betrayal, but the world of liberation. I had done what needed to be done, and I no longer had to live in fear. I didn't have to worry about who would seize my assets or who would manipulate my emotions to achieve their goals. I began to feel a new strength rising within me. Each day, I became a little stronger, and each day I moved closer to the freedom I had forgotten about for so long. The feeling of deciding to walk alone, no longer dependent on anyone, was a freedom I could not fully describe in words. No matter what happens, I will not give up. Day by day, I no longer looked back at the past with sadness or disappointment. I looked to the future with belief and determination. I would not let betrayal take over my life. I would protect myself, protect everything I had built, and live my life without fear, without worry. That day, after completing the legal procedures, after the heavy feeling of confrontation with Ben and Sarah subsided, I sat alone in the living room in silence, only hearing the sound of the wind blowing through the window. There were no more laughs from Ben, no more intimate conversations. Everything seemed to pass in silence, and I could feel that my life had changed forever. It had been a long time since I had experienced a moment of true peace like this, and even though I was standing in the middle of a vast ocean of betrayal, I could still sense a small glimmer of light. Eventually, the silence within me was broken by the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I stood up and went to open the door. When I saw Olivia, I couldn't hold back my emotions. My granddaughter, the child I had loved since she was little, now stood at my door with a gentle, tender smile. She was a part of everything I had fought to protect. Every time I saw Olivia, I felt as if a part of me had returned, a part of the innocence and purity I once had, but now it felt like a distant memory. Olivia was no longer the little girl I once knew. She had grown up, matured, and her face showed wisdom and strength more than ever. "Hello, Grandma," Olivia said, her voice gentle but full of concern. She hugged me, and I could feel the warmth and love in that embrace. That feeling was like a lifeline in the vast ocean of sorrow I was experiencing. Olivia had always been a part of my family, a source of hope, and one of the people I had always trusted and loved. But this time, her appearance wasn't just a casual visit. I realized that Olivia was no longer just a child in need of my protection. She had become an important part of my healing journey. In a world full of betrayal, Olivia was like a flickering light in the dark, helping me not to lose my way. After I led Olivia into the living room, we sat together. I tried to remain calm, but inside, the pain was still very real. The sense of losing peace in my family, losing trust in those I loved, was truly heavy. But Olivia wasn't someone I could hide my emotions from. She knew better than anyone that I was suffering. "Olivia, why did you come here?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I still wanted to hear it from her. Olivia looked at me, her eyes a bit confused, but also very determined. "Grandma, I know our family is going through a hard time. I know you're hurting because of everything that's happened." She paused for a moment, then continued, "But you're not alone. I'm here, and I'll always be here to help you." I felt as if a light had been kindled inside me, a strength I didn't expect. This feeling eased my heart somewhat. Olivia, though still young, had a maturity and empathy that many adults didn't possess. I looked into my granddaughter's eyes, and I realized that even though my family had betrayed me, not everything was lost. The love in the family still remained, and sometimes it comes from the people you least expect. "Are you really ready to help me?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. "You don't think I have anything left to give you, yet you're thinking about helping me?" Olivia took my hand, and I could feel the warmth in her grasp. "Grandma, you are my family. It's not because you have assets or anything else. It's because you've taught me. You've loved me. I don't need to have anything to help you. I just need to be here, to make you feel less lonely, and I will do everything I can to make you feel you have someone you can trust." I choked up, unable to say anything. Olivia's words were a confirmation that, no matter how dark life may be, love and unity still exist. It made me realize that, Even though everything had changed, I could still find peace within myself, not from betrayal, but from the genuine love, like the one Olivia was giving me. Olivia, I really don't know what to say. I thought I had lost everything, but you've shown me that I can still find what I've lost, I said, my eyes filled with tears. Thank you for being here for me when I was at my lowest. Olivia smiled gently, the smile of a child who had grown up, but still retained the purity in her eyes. I'm just doing what's right, Grandma. I love you, and I won't let you be alone. We sat there in silence, but I felt a deep comfort. Olivia didn't just come to visit me. She came to bridge the gap between me and everything I had lost. Even though Ben and Sarah had betrayed me, I could still find empathy and support from people like Olivia. That afternoon, I walked with Olivia in the small garden of my house. Spring was approaching, and the flowers were beginning to bloom, creating a beautiful yet quiet scene. We didn't speak much, but Olivia's presence was a form of healing that words couldn't express. I felt that, even though everything had changed, even though Ben and Sarah had hurt me, I could still find the strength to continue living. Olivia wasn't just my granddaughter. She was proof of the strength of family love, the continuation of values I had tried to pass on throughout my life. Her love for me, even in the most difficult circumstances, was what I needed at that moment. And I realized that, even though there were times I wanted to give up, family would always be the place where I could find support and encouragement. As evening fell, I sat in my room looking out the window, and I felt a strange peace. Even though the road ahead was still filled with challenges, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. With Olivia by my side, I felt I could overcome everything. Every challenge would become easier when I knew that love and resilience from family would help me stand strong. No matter what had happened, no matter how everything had crumbled, I knew I could keep walking forward because I not only had family, but also love and trust in myself. And with Olivia by my side, I understood that nothing could stop me. When I sat alone in the living room, my thoughts felt like endless waves, constantly rolling. The fatigue and loneliness had surrounded me for days. It had been so long since I had truly felt peace within myself. Each day that passed, I felt myself sinking deeper into the darkness of betrayal. There was no one in the family to share this pain with, no one to pour out all the confusing thoughts in my heart. Ben and Sarah, the people I had spent my life loving, had pushed me into a tragedy I never thought I would have to face. But there was one thing I couldn't deny. No matter how deep the pain was, no matter how profound the betrayal, I could not let it define my life. I couldn't continue to live in the shadow of anger and hurt. Even though everything around me had collapsed, I could still choose to rise. And that choice was not revenge or retreat, but forgiveness. I had dedicated my whole life to this family, trying to build the best life I could for my children. But now, I realized that, in all that I had done, I had forgotten one important thing. I also needed to love and protect myself. If I kept living in sorrow, I would never find peace. More than ever, I needed to forgive. Not Ben or Sarah, but myself. Forgiveness is not easy. It is a difficult decision, one that requires me to let go of anger, to release the negative emotions that have consumed me for so long. But I realized that if I didn't forgive, I wouldn't be able to move forward. Forgiveness doesn't mean I overlook their mistakes, but it means I won't be tormented by the painful memories anymore. Forgiveness is the way I can free myself from this betrayal, so I can live a fuller life. I remembered Olivia's words when she came to visit. Grandma, I know you're heartbroken, but you're not alone. Those words were like a lifeline, pulling me out of the quagmire of pain. Olivia was not just my granddaughter. She was the bridge between me and everything I had lost. Even though my family had fallen apart, even though Ben and Sarah had betrayed me, Olivia was still here. And her love helped me realize that I couldn't live in sorrow forever. The days after my confrontation with Ben and Sarah, I no longer felt the anger that had consumed me before. Even though everything still lingered within me, I knew that forgiveness was the only way I could keep living. Not because I wanted Ben or Sarah to come back, but because I wanted to save myself, so I wouldn't live forever in hatred. The feeling when I decided to forgive wasn't one of immediate relief. On the contrary, it felt like my heart was being torn apart once again. But that was the price I had to pay to continue living. If I didn't forgive, I couldn't move forward. And in order to move forward, I had to let go of everything that had hurt me. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the pain, but about allowing myself to look to the future without being haunted by the past. As I made this decision, I couldn't help but think of Ben. He was my son, and even though he had betrayed me, I couldn't help but feel the pain. I had spent my whole life raising and loving him, and now I had to forgive him, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to break free from this pain. So, I called my lawyer, John Carter, to officially begin the process of revoking the power of attorney I had given Ben. I knew this was an important step, not only to protect myself, but also to regain control of my life. I couldn't let Ben continue to control my assets. I couldn't let him exploit the trust I had placed in him. Every time I signed those documents, I felt the pain in my heart, but I also knew it was the right thing to do. When I completed the power of attorney revocation, I felt a sense of release. A part of me had been lifted, and I realized that, no matter how hard things were, I could still start over. I no longer had to worry about what Ben would do next. I had taken control of my life, and that was what I needed most at that moment. But I also understood that forgiveness wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a new journey, a journey where I would no longer be bound by the pains of the past. In the days that followed, I no longer felt the weight of sadness pressing on my heart. The feeling of forgiveness didn't make me forget the hurt, but it helped me not let that pain control my life. I no longer had to live in the shadow of betrayal. Even though I still couldn't completely forget what had happened, I had learned to accept and let go. One day, when I sat in the garden, watching the flowers bloom, I felt a peace within me. It was the peace I had been searching for all this time, the peace I couldn't have without forgiveness. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could change the way I faced it. I could continue living, continue loving, and continue hoping for the future, because I knew I deserved a peaceful life, a life not haunted by anger and hurt. What Ben and Sarah had done couldn't change me. They had caused me pain, but I wouldn't let that pain define me. I wouldn't allow them to control my life any longer. I would live my life, not to please anyone, but to please myself. I would find trust in love, in family, and in myself. With this decision to forgive, I not only freed myself, but I also gave Ben a chance to change. I knew that, even though he might not change immediately, at least he would understand that I wasn't a mother who would be endlessly hurt. I had loved, and I still loved. But I wouldn't let betrayal drag me down any further. I would stand strong and keep living because I understood that my life couldn't be dictated by what had already happened. Forgiveness isn't easy, but I did it. And now I will continue walking on the new path, the path I've chosen for myself. A path no longer dictated by pain and hurt, but one of freedom, love, and peace. There are moments in life when you have to pause and reflect on everything that has passed. There were times when I wondered if I could ever rise from the ruins, if I could continue living with the pain my family had caused. After everything that had happened with Ben and Sarah, I felt as though a part of me had died. All that I had built, all the hopes I had invested my heart and soul into, now lay in ruins in a single moment. But now, I realize that, even though I may have lost everything, there is still one thing I can rely on: myself. After finalizing the procedure to revoke Ben's power of attorney, I began to feel a sense of release. The relief didn't come immediately, but it slowly crept into every corner of my soul. Every day, I felt myself becoming stronger, no longer shackled by painful memories or betrayal. Although I still remembered the moments of family life I once had, I didn't allow myself to live in the past. I couldn't continue living in what had been lost. I had to seek out new things, new opportunities, and perhaps that begins with reinventing myself. I decided to start over with the smallest things. My house, the place I had lived in for so many years, no longer felt like a place of peace. Every room, every object, every photograph reminded me of memories, but it also reminded me of the pain. I couldn't continue living in the shadow of those memories. I began cleaning the house, not just because I wanted to clear the physical space, but because I needed to cleanse my soul. Each step I took in the house, every corner I tidied, was a step toward healing the wounds Ben and Sarah had left behind. I needed to create a new space, not just for myself, but for my future. Every day, I spent time rearranging things, throwing away what was no longer necessary. The memories that couldn't be erased were still there, but I didn't let them claim me. Instead of holding on to everything, I began learning how to let go. The photographs of family, the items I once thought were of great importance, no longer held the same value for me. I learned that not everything needs to be kept. Some things are just memories, and they aren't what define me. I didn't need to hold on to those memories to feel like I was part of my family. Olivia had visited me many times during these days. Every time she came, the house became more alive. Olivia wasn't just my granddaughter. She was a great source of encouragement in my life. Every time I saw her, I felt a genuine love that I couldn't find in anyone else. She was part of the family that I could still trust, and I couldn't let myself ignore that love. One day, while Olivia and I were cleaning a room, she asked me a question that made me think for a long time. "Grandma, do you want to change your living space? I know you've lived here for a long time, but maybe a new space would make you feel better." Olivia's suggestion made me stop and think. This house had been with me for many years, and even though everything had changed, I couldn't deny that I had deep feelings for this place. But maybe Olivia was right. A new space could help me find myself again, help me not be bound by painful memories. I couldn't keep living in the past. If I wanted a brighter future, I needed to change, starting with the smallest things. "I think I'll move," I replied to Olivia, my voice calm but firm. Perhaps it's time I leave those memories behind and find a new place to live. But I won't forget the beautiful memories, the things that made me who I am today. I'll carry those good memories with me, but I won't let them control my life anymore." Olivia smiled and nodded. She knew this wasn't an easy decision, but she understood that I had reached a turning point in my life. I had chosen to change, and she was the one who helped me see clearly that sometimes, in order to move forward, we need to let go of what's behind. The feeling when I decided to move into a new house was truly special. When I first visited the house, I felt an unusual sense of peace. Though this house wasn't large, it had an open, bright, and very cozy space. It wasn't like the home I had lived in before, where every corner was filled with memories of Ben and Sarah, painful memories that I couldn't erase. This new house didn't bring the ambiguity of the past. It felt like a fresh start, a place where I could rebuild my life from the very first brick. With Olivia's support, I began cleaning and decorating the new house. Together, we arranged the furniture, decorated each room, and I felt that I no longer felt alone. This house wasn't just a living space. It was a place where I would find myself again. Each step of cleaning, each change I made, felt like a part of me was being healed. I no longer saw the haunting past, but a promising future. In fact, the new house was just one part of my journey to rebuild my life. I began participating in activities I had never thought about before. I had spent too long living in the shadow of sorrow, too long letting the past control me. Now, it was time to find joy in life again, even if it was in small things. I started taking painting classes, where I could express my emotions through strokes of the brush, creating paintings. I also started writing, recording my thoughts and feelings. I didn't know where I would go, but I knew I wouldn't let myself be hindered by the pain anymore. I would rebuild my life from the good things, and I wouldn't let the dark shadows of the past pull me back. Day by day, I felt myself becoming stronger. The sense of safety, the sense of freedom I had never known, was slowly taking shape inside me. And no matter how many difficulties or challenges lay ahead, I knew I had done the right thing. I was no longer a weak person. I was a strong woman who had risen after all the brokenness, and I would never give up on my life. Olivia continued to be an indispensable companion in this journey. She was the light in my life, the one person who made me feel that family wasn't always about betrayal. I looked at her and knew that, no matter how life changed, I could still find peace in my heart. There have been countless times when I've asked myself if I can rise again after everything that has happened. Can I continue to live with the pain of the betrayal and loss caused by Ben and Sarah? My life, once filled with love, hope, and long-term plans for a happy family, has now changed. Ben, the son I devoted my entire life to raising, is now the one who has pushed me into this situation. Sarah, the daughter-in-law I once considered my own, is now the one who helped my son in his scheme to seize my assets. Facing all of this is a pain that words can hardly describe, and each passing day, I feel like I'm sinking deeper into the darkness of betrayal. But I understand that life cannot just stop with tears. I cannot continue to live in regret over what has been lost. I've loved this family with all my heart, and betrayal cannot take away everything I've given to them. Every tear I shed, every sleepless night I spent in sorrow. But one day, I realized that I have to keep living. I have to step through all this pain to find peace within myself. And to do that, I need to choose forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't easy, especially when you have to face the wounds caused by the ones you loved the most. But I understand that if I don't forgive, if I let anger and hurt take over, I won't be able to move forward. Everything I've done for Ben, all the sacrifices I made for him, now seem like meaningless efforts. But the truth is, I did all of that out of love. And that love cannot disappear just because of such a huge shock. And perhaps love is the key to overcoming this challenge. When I decided to forgive, I didn't do it because Ben or Sarah deserved forgiveness. I did it for myself. Forgiveness is how I free myself from the torment of the past, how I prevent this betrayal from continuing to occupy my heart. It's a difficult decision, but at the same time, it's the decision that frees me from the pain. I can't change the past, I can't erase the harm they caused, but I can change the way I face it. And that change starts with me forgiving myself. Olivia, my granddaughter, has been a huge source of support on this journey. She's not just my beloved granddaughter, but also a wonderful companion. The only one in the family I feel I can trust completely. Every time she visits, my home becomes more lively, filled with love. Olivia is the one who helped me realize that even though I had been betrayed by those I loved the most, I could still find peace in the love my family gives me. I'm not alone in this journey. She helped me see that, even if I lose everything I once had, I can still find a source of encouragement and strength from those I love. I started looking at life with a new perspective. This house, although it had witnessed all my pain, is now the place where I find myself again. I no longer look at this house with memories of betrayal. Instead, I look at it with hope. I began changing the way I saw everything. This house was not just a place to store memories, but a place where I would begin my life anew. Every day I cleaned. Every time I rearranged things, I felt like I was reorganizing my life. Every item I threw away was a part of the past that I could no longer let control my present. Along with Olivia, I decided to find a new home. Not because I wanted to escape the past, but because I wanted to create a new space, one that wasn't haunted by painful memories. Every step in this new home felt like a step forward in my healing journey. I no longer felt like a victim of betrayal. I had learned to stand up, to love myself again, and most importantly, to learn how to let go. The first day I moved into the new house, my feelings were strange. This small, lovely house wasn't like what I had imagined, but it brought a vitality and warmth I hadn't expected. I could see the light filtering through the windows. I could feel the space around me becoming alive. This house, though simple, contained everything I needed to continue living. It wasn't just a shelter. It was a space where I could recreate myself, where I could start over. Olivia helped me a lot with decorating and refreshing the house. She brought me ideas, suggestions, and made me feel like I wasn't just living, but actually building a new life. Together, we picked out items, arranged paintings, chairs, and lamps. Every detail in the house held love, the kind of sharing I had never felt so completely. Although the house wasn't big, I felt I had a peaceful space, a space just for me. However, I knew that this new house was only part of my journey. This journey wasn't just about changing the physical space, it was also about changing the space in my soul. I had learned to look at myself, to face the pain I had once avoided. And I realized that, no matter how the world changed, I could still stand strong. I could still find peace in my heart. The love from Olivia, my family, and myself has made me stronger than ever. One day, as I was sitting in the garden of my new house, Olivia came to visit. She sat down next to me, looking at me with deep understanding. "Grandma, I see that you've changed a lot. I'm proud of you," Olivia said, her voice gentle but full of love. "You've gone through so much, and you're still standing. You never give up, and I'll always be here with you." Her words made me choke up. Throughout these days, I had felt alone. I had felt like I was a victim of betrayal. But now, with Olivia by my side, I realized I wasn't alone. The love of family isn't something that can be broken. Even though there are deep wounds, love can still heal them. And that is the strength that helps me move forward. Resilience isn't about not knowing pain, but about continuing to walk forward, no matter how painful it is. And I will keep walking, not because I don't feel pain, but because I've decided not to let that pain stop my life anymore. I will not give up. Life doesn't always go smoothly, and there are moments when we can't avoid deep wounds. But it's these very wounds that become the material for me to find my strength, to rediscover myself. I don't know how many times I've asked myself if I could rise again after all these losses, but I understand that no matter how shattered everything may seem, I still have the choice to start over. Forgiveness is not an act of weakness. It is a strong determination not to let pain dominate my life. Since the day I faced betrayal, I've learned that sometimes revenge is not the only way to feel free. Forgiveness is a journey toward freedom, where I am no longer imprisoned by the events of the past. I will not let betrayal and deception control my life anymore. Instead, I've chosen to live with resilience, to choose to love myself again, no matter the challenges that lie ahead. Sometimes, forgiveness is not about doing something good for others, but about doing something good for yourself. But this is my story. And this story is not just about me. It could be anyone's story, the ones who have endured and are struggling with wounds, with pain that only we truly understand. Life is full of challenges, but each of us has the right to choose how we face them. We can choose to live in hatred, or we can choose to let go and find freedom, to find our own strength once again. And when I look back at the days that have passed, I no longer feel like a victim. I am a survivor because I've overcome the pain, because I've chosen to live and love again. Life may never be the same as it was, but I've found a new path, one full of hope and love. Now, I have a strong belief that no matter how bad life's challenges may be, we still have the right to stand up and move forward. We are never alone in this journey. Love, forgiveness, and resilience will help us overcome any hardship. And the most important thing is that we must believe in ourselves. So, what about you? What path can you choose in your own life? Are there any wounds you need to let go of in order to live a happier life? Share your story in the comments below, because sometimes sharing is a way to heal, a way to realize that we are not alone. Thank you for walking with me through this journey, and I hope you find peace in your own life.